The Alliance of Small Island States is a coalition of small island and low-lying coastal countries drawn from all oceans and regions of this world, as this map shows. They share a common vulnerability to the adverse effects of global climate change, such as environmental and developmental challenges due to climatic-related effects. Within the United Nations system, the Alliance of Small Island States functions primarily as a negotiating voice for small developing states. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC, was created in 1992 and ratified in 1994, implementing a framework of guiding principles for climate change prevention. The convention has 195 member states and 2 observer states. The Alliance of Small Island States was created in 1990 and is a non-Annex I party to the UNFCCC. That is, a party comprising of mostly developing countries, especially akin to the adverse effects of climate change. The first commitment period of the Kyoto Protocol started in 2008 and ended in 2012, along with other groups. AOSIS campaigned for the second commitment period, within which countries agreed to reduce emissions by at least 18% below 1990 levels, running from 2013 to 2020. Many life-altering changes threaten the small island states, including an acceleration in sea levels, deadly cyclones, the loss of mangrove habitats, the destruction of coral reefs, ocean acidification, and prolonged droughts. In considering the Alliance's negotiating position, they were the first countries to propose a draft text during the implementation of the Kyoto Protocol, calling for cuts in carbon dioxide emissions by 2005 of 20% from 1990 levels. The Alliance states recognises the undeniable and inescapable reality of anthropogenic climate change, therefore influencing their negotiating bloc within the UNFCCC process. United by the ever-present threats climate change poses to their direct survival, they frequently adopt a common stance in negotiations due to the commonalities across the domestic circumstances of the bloc's member states, specifically their low-lying coastal locations, the lack of appropriate resources, and the threats this presents. The Alliance recognises the critical need to reduce emissions in the short term. The developed countries' negotiating positions are more focused on long-term goals, however, such as the post-2015 agreement, due to their strong adaptive capacity to the already present threats. However, the developing countries' states lack such adaptive capacity, therefore their negotiating stance focuses on the development of short-term, concrete goals. The Alliance proposes that an agreement must be formulated which will bring carbon dioxide levels down and limit warming to below 1.5 degrees by the end of the century. Further, if carbon dioxide levels near the 450 parts per million mark, coral reefs, which support many island economies, are likely to stop growing. Therefore, they want to limit it to 350 parts per million. Unsurprisingly, the issues of high importance to the Alliance concern adaptation and mitigation. The Doha Gateway Statement, created in 2012, included a plan for loss and damage proposed by the Alliance, drawing on the principles of common but differentiated responsibility, polluter pays principle, and intergenerational equity. The Alliance acknowledges the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities in particular, which focuses on respective countries' historical responsibility for the emissions released, thus obliging the developed countries to take the lead in combating climate change. The proposal firstly recognised that historical information about hazards and risks must be acquired in order to develop country-specific mitigation measures. Secondly, insurance systems must be available for small island states. And finally, countries should be compensated for losses stemming from climate impacts through the creation of an international solidarity fund. Furthermore, the Alliance emphasises the necessity for additional financial resources, technology and capacity building, all to be transferred to them from the developed countries. Discussion surrounding climate agreements focuses on 2 separate work streams. Workstream 1 concerns the development of the 2015 protocol to be implemented in 2020. Alternatively, Workstream 2 focuses on the identification of pre-2020 mitigation strategies. In the lead up to the Bonn Climate Convention in June 2013, the deployment of mitigation actions is the Alliance's focus, as well as overcoming implementation barriers through identification of strategies to assist in the delivery of financial resources, technology, and capacity building. Ultimately, the Alliance's declaration of 2012 affirmed the negotiating position previously discussed, providing that the survival of the Alliance requires: number one, limiting the global average temperature increase to well below 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels; number two, stabilising the atmospheric carbon dioxide levels at well below 350 parts per million; and number three, ensuring that the peak of global greenhouse gas emissions occurs in 2015 and declines thereafter. This should all be achieved through the creation of a universal binding agreement. Following the two-level game theory, the Alliance's negotiating position must satisfy domestic and foreign objectives and audiences. The Alliance unites collaboratively to develop strategies to combat climate change, thus recognising that their collective domestic action, or actions between each of the signatory countries, can have a beneficial effect upon international politics in the creation of a universal agreement. It is clear that numerous strengths arise within the Alliance's negotiating position. They are united by the goal of achieving a universal agreement to minimise the present and future effects of climate change. Further, they are able to maximise power through negotiating in a coalition, within which they have exerted profound influence upon global climate policy. Furthermore, their objectives achieve the concept of intergenerational equity, as they are consistent with the preservation of the natural environment for the enjoyment of the present and future generations. Their strong negotiating position was most prominently revealed leading up to the creation of the UNFCCC in 1992, where the success proved that the development of clearly defined initiatives will assist them in achieving their objectives. Thus, in the following years, their focus has been on reaching firm targets. Nonetheless, their negotiating position is predominantly focused on short-term goals, and as developed countries, they have an inability to fund strong representation and take drastic action. Therefore, as cohesive as the Alliance is, the developed countries are obliged to take the lead. Additionally, in the Alliance's early days, the coalition was very effective in presenting a uniform voice. However, as the climate agenda has grown, negotiating groups within the Alliance have emerged, and the differences have become more pronounced, such as through the growing number of individual submissions to the UNFCCC. This division has been exacerbated through the two-level game theory, as international responsibilities may be curtailed in order for domestic interests to prevail. Whilst common issues amongst the Alliance include vulnerability, financial support and capacity building, their position has been openly opposed when national interests have been concerned, as threats affect states in different ways due to environmental and geographical factors. States such as the Marshall and Cook Islands face threats of inundation of two-thirds of the island with just an 80-centimetre sea level rise, whereas other states are more vulnerable to coastal erosion and coral reef destruction. Further, some states are highly vegetated, such as Papua New Guinea, therefore comprising different interests in regard to land use and forestry, whereby individual self-interests have tended to dominate. Samoa, for example, has supported the strict position on the reduction of emissions regarding forestry. However, the Dominican Republic has argued the opposite. Further, Grenada supports their banana industries, whereas Seychelles favours fishing. Consequently, diverging interests are emerging at the cost of the Alliance's overall unity and strength. Nonetheless, despite these tensions, the Alliance's small island states is still a tightly coordinated coalition, as many of the individual submissions still reinforce the group positions. Therefore, they remain a key player within the UNFCCC process.